Hello, it's your boy Ben Cossy, and we're here today with another episode of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. Going to be a little bit of a shorter one today because, as I'm sure you may have noticed, if you're watching this when it comes out, maybe you're watching this years from now and you're like, oh? But I didn't post a Biss episode this weekend, but I'm giving it to you now. Been a very, 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 very busy person of late. My weekend was totally booked out with some work-related things, so I apologize. I just did not have time to record Biss this week, and I don't have any backlog episodes at the moment, which I'm going to have to change that's for sure. But enough of that. That's what it was then. Here's where we are now, and we're recording an episode all about dragons today. I put up recently in the community tab on my YouTube channel saying, hey, vote for the episode that you want. People voted for dragons. So, be good to put some more polls up in the future there so you can vote for the future Biss episodes. So be sure to keep an eye on that in the future. But in the meantime, you can always comment below, don't forget, because, in the past you couldn't, but I've changed things and now you can. So, yes. Don't forget to comment below if you can. You can always suggest themes that you're thinking about, or just let me know what you think on the episode. Love a good comment, love a good bit of audience interaction. Join the conversation. Anyway, that's it. Let's dive into the first dragon mock today. The mock that inspired this episode, it's by your boy Jafer, and this is called Dagon, the Great Leviathan. And you might be like, it's a Leviathan, Ben. There's not a dragon. It has dragon in the name without the R. It kind of counts, and the tags say dragon. And, it looks dragony enough. And there are many forms of dragons, or just big mythological beasts. What is a dragon? Yeah, I think I'm saying it counts. Anyway, enough of what does or doesn't count. What do I love about this mock? What can we learn from this mock? What can inspire us about this mock? Well, certainly I think one thing that's really important to note is the evolution of this mock. If you head over to Jafer's Instagram, and you know what? You can take a look at the links in the description and do that yourself. But this mock has gone through many different iterations, and he's been working on this mock for actually quite some time. Let me show you the original version of this mock that was posted on Flickr. It's certainly very different. And I'll briefly read what the description here says that Jafer's written in. He says, this is a side project of his that he's been working on for about a year now, and he's finally happy to the point where he can say that it's officially done. And I think that's just kind of really nice to think about. The fact that, you could be working on a mock and you're just not happy with it, or it's just not quite getting to the point that it needs to be at, or all that sort of stuff. And, that is what it is. Hey, if the mock that you're working on is not quite working out, give it time. We saw what Jafer said here. It took him a year to get this mock to where he wanted it to get to. So don't feel bad if it's taking you a bit of time. It takes even the greats like Jafer, it takes them time as well. So, with a little bit of time, a little bit of patience, and also a bit of growth. You might be building now, and 2 years from now, you'll be an even better builder than you were back then, So a bit of time, bit of practice, all that sort of stuff, and you'll get to a really good place, that's for sure. So I really just wanted to point that out, because I think that's just really commendable, and it's also just a really fun little comparison to see the original and what it is now, because there's quite a fair bit of growth there. It's really, really nice to see. So let's talk about this mock here. I think this is one of the best examples of part spamming ever. I think that, for those of you who don't know, part spamming, essentially what it is just spamming parts. The repetition of the same piece or very similar pieces to create a specific texture or a specific look. So in this regard here, because this is a Leviathan, to get that almost sort of snake-like body, Jafer has repeated a whole bunch of different sort of curved slope pieces and system parts here, whether that's sort of, different kind of curved tile pieces in, this azure color or in purple there. There's a fair whack of it. And obviously, I even remember following it on his Instagram. He did a fair few amount of bricklink orders to get that much of these specific pieces. But, if you've got a pick a brick store near you, you can always bulk buy certain parts in certain sizes, shapes, and colors, all that sort of stuff. So it's something that can be achievable, and sometimes it can be cheaper to buy in bulk. So it's something to certainly consider. But I also think it's certainly something to consider just because of how nice it looks. And if you are trying to achieve this really organic, almost snake-like body in this regard, it's kind of the best way to do it. And it's really nice too to see the sort of gradient and change in shape and size of this as well. How it starts off quite thick at the sort of top of the head and transitions down into the lower parts of the body where it starts to thin out a little bit. And Jafer's changed that by either just slightly decreasing things by like a plate or two, or slowly transitioning out of the sort of translucent studs, all sorts of little stuff like that. I think there's that very subtle gradient is really, really pretty. It's also really cool to note that when we take a look at sort of the tail end of the tail, how Japhas used these snot bricks that have the studs on the side there. Snot, of course, standing for studs, not on top. And yeah, those studs on the side there, because they're not on top. The fact that it's just that little extra bit of plastic there that kind of nicely wraps that together, because obviously it is a series of repeated like circles in that regard. So it's nice that just that little extra bit of plastic doesn't hinder the movement or posability or the general look of it, but just adds that little bit extra there, so your eye is kind of taken away from that gap that's in there, and it makes it just look a bit more free-flowing in that regard. So it's a very subtle but really good little detail, and a great way to make it look a little bit less sort of blocky and Lego-y, and actually make it look like this smooth, rounded, flowing thing. It's really awesome. So what else do I like about this mock? I like the subtle hints of dark red. You know, it makes sense that the inside of the mouth would be dark red, because that's kind of how most animals work. That it's a different color in that regard. But I like the fact that there are those kind of like feathers and these larger flex tube pieces here in dark red as well. For a moment, I thought those flex tube pieces were in purple, which they do technically exist in purple. They're not as common. And I thought that was cool, but as I was studying these pictures, I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure they're dark red, but maybe it's a late night recording and Ben's losing his sight. I don't know, whatever. But to me, it looks dark red, and so I'm gonna lock that in. But I love that little extra pop of dark red. It actually works so well with purple, to the point of this is maybe like the, I don't know, 6th time I've looked at this mock, and now that I'm actually recording here, I was like, I didn't actually see the dark red there before. So I love just how nicely integrated that is there. It is this beautiful pop of color, but it flows so beautifully with the rest of the color scheme. So yeah, we always talk about in Biss seeing a nice pop of color just to add a bit of contrast, but it's nice that the pop of color here doesn't add contrast, but it blends nicely. And once you do kind of notice it, it just feels so right, It's cool. It's really cool. So yeah, overall this mock is fantastic. Real just menacing, beautiful overall sort of silhouette and look to it. And it's just flawless. It's very well done. So love your work, good sir. Let's move on to a mock by Moko, and this is called Dragon Knight. So, this episode being about dragons, you don't have to necessarily stick to the specific look and feel of a typical dragon or wyvern or all those different subclasses of dragons out there. Why not take the kind of general spirit of a dragon and put it into your mock? Or you could do something cool like this, where to some degree it kind of looks like a dude who's wearing armor that, he probably made from the scales and flesh of a dragon, So, different ways that you could take it. I think certainly the most prominent part of this mock here is the head design that uses that blue, colors that both start with B, you can understand my confusion, this dark blue dragon head piece, which comes on a Viking set, which is actually not used as a dragon head piece. It's actually used as the jaw on the dragon head, so close enough. But this piece comes in a variety of different colors across some of the other Vikings dragon-related Lego sets. Slightly older sets at this point. I want to say it was like 2004 or 5 or something. They're a bit old, but they're pretty cool, for sure. So, hey, maybe you've got some lying around, or you want to play with those pieces, or you want to play with some of the more modern dragon head elements, which, some of those things still exist, and you can fairly easily get even still to this day. But I think it's beautiful to see how nicely integrated it is with this mock on the head there, because it looks like a dragon head. So if that's its purpose, he's done it well. But when you study some of these pictures, it's a little hard to tell, but I can't help but feel that there's a head underneath that dragon head. I don't know if the eyes are those little sort of gold teeth, or in some of the images I swear I can see like a little bit of trans blue. I don't know. Part of me feels like that's sort of like a helmet that has that dragon aesthetic to it, and underneath is his actual like robotic head. And I also really like that idea. So I think either way it works perfectly well. But, like I said, building up dragon armor and converting that dragon head into some sort of helmet, really cool idea, for sure. And we also see that dragon head piece being used in silver and a little bit more in dark blue throughout this mock, whether that's on sort of the upper legs or the shoulders there. I also quite like that. So yeah, that real aesthetic of converting the slayed dragons that you've killed and putting it into armor, very much like a video game of sorts, I think it's really cool. Some other stuff that's really cool are the weapons on this mock. The shield, straight up just being Toa Lakan's shield, but because there were a few, connection points on that shield there, it's really nice to see how he's added all these other ornate details to it to make him look like this regal, very powerful, strong knight that has, very expensive, very royal weaponry that I'm sure the king has bestowed onto him or something. You start to get a bit of backstory out of it. But I love that, using that Knight's Kingdom shield piece, putting some studs on it, some of the gold details there, really makes it pop. It's really nice. And this weapon design here too, I love it. It's quite simplistic, but it's got this beautiful curve to it, just using two normal weapon pieces. I believe that's the blade from Toa Ignika, and then that is the Liwa blade from Fantoka. They appear in some other sets and on other characters, but those are the two things that came to mind at this point in time. But it's nice to see just that very subtle sort of curved connector piece that links the two together there and just gives it this very subtle curve. It's a really, really special design, I think. I think it works very well. So really, really great idea for the weapons there. And in general, just an awesome overall look and a more unique way of approaching a dragon-themed character. But, that's it for the dragon-themed stuff. Let's move into some actual dragons now. This is by Max Howell, and this is called The Apostle. So, for those playing at home, it says here in the description that this was inspired by Irvine and the other apostles from the manga Berserk. So if you've read that, maybe you can see that. I looked up the images online, and I do not see the resemblance, but I also am not familiar with that manga, so... But hey, maybe you see that and I don't. You're like, oh my god, what? So if that means something to you, I'm glad it does. But what do I think about this mark? I think it's fantastic. I love the head design on this little dude riding the dragon here. That is from the Yellow Lantern, Green Lantern, one of the very few Green Lantern focused Lego sets that we got. Obviously it's a symbol from DC Comics in that regard, but it's nice to see it being put on the head here as this very abstract face design. Typically with faces, you get your nose, your eyes, your mouth, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's always really special and unique to see a character that has a face design or any part of the body that really strays from the norm. And I think the idea of using this printed piece here that has this really abstract pattern to it, I don't know, just adds this sense of sort of like myth and fable and legend. It looks like some sort of creature from someone's, almost like they came from another dimension or something. They're like kind of alien in nature. I think that's beautiful. I think it's really cool. It just makes this design so sort of curious and different and unique, Really makes it stand out. And I think, if your mock stands out from the rest, that's normally a good sign. So love that idea. Fantastic creative choice there. The hair design's also really nice too. There's sort of thick red hair there. Always cool. It's rare to see redhead mocks too. More respect for the redheaded people. The dragon itself, though, is lovely. The face design in itself is gorgeous. The way he's sort of neatly wrapped those larger tooth pieces around the eyes just to give it this, really sort of pronounced, lovely-looking eye design. And then using what I believe is two cherry pieces there for the actual eyes, or one on each side in that regard. Beautiful design. Great way to do it. I remember on an older mock, I was like, oh, that's a cherry piece that they used. And they corrected me and they're like, it was actually some teeth pieces that I inserted in there. So maybe it's that as well, but it looks a little more rounded here. So I do believe that that is the cherry piece. And if it is those teeth again, then by all means, use the cherry piece because it would actually work very well as a sort of double eye there, or sort of double pupil perhaps. It's really cool. And it, again, makes the head design look a little bit more unique and different. It's, I think, quite nice. I also quite like the tail design here. The beautiful pop of red there, like we said with the Jafer's Leviathan mock before. This is, the other way of focusing on a bit of a pop of color, because this dragon, for the most part, really is just very, very, like, kind of 90% just that sort of beautiful, thick black on this mock here. Yes, it's got the claws and those horns and the eyes and stuff, but they're quite a minimal color, whereas this big pop of red really, really does shine and really sort of draws your attention towards the mock. So, yeah, if you want to do that, add a bit of a pop of color, I think it can go a long way here. And I think it also kind of leads into that little bit of sort of myth and fable, I could probably imagine some sort of legend being passed around a village saying, there's this dragon that's as black as night, but it has this sort of crimson streak on its tail, and if you ever spot a crimson streak in the distance in the night sky, you're seeing this dragon flying overhead. I don't know. That's just the sort of thing I get when I look at this, and I always like my mocks that make me want to come up with a story or imagine something, So, yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. That's for the most part all I wanted to talk about on this mock here, but I just mentioned stories. Don't forget to check out the BIS podcast I did with Brendan and Molly, or Shadowgear and Elira, if you want to call them that, where we talked about storytelling. That's right, there's advertising in BIS now. There's not. But, if you like storytelling as much as I do with this mock here, that was certainly worth the listen, in my opinion. So, hey, it was a good podcast. Give it a watch if you want to. Anyway, enough advertising. We're not here for that. Let's move over to the final mock now. Like I said, bit of a shorter episode because I'm a little stretched on time this week. But I wanted to get your weekly bis, Anyway, this mock is by Aiden Builds, and it's called Tithara. Something like that. Yes, I think this mock is quite similar to the last one. It does have that sort of I don't know, very sort of like fable, myth, legend sort of look to it. One of the comments on Flickr here on the sort of describing this mock, they said that they could definitely see its sort of fluidity in some sort of animation or stop motion, and I can't help but agree with that. Just the general like curvature of the body of this dragon, I just can't help but imagine it in some sort of animated movie or something, or just seeing this dragon just sort of fluttering and flying throughout the sky. It's awesome. So I think it's just really commendable to see, just by simply creating a very sort of fluid, beautiful shape like this, almost this sort of like S of this dragon, that does so much. You just can't help but just see an image in your head or imagine its movement, all of that sort of stuff. So, like I just said, I always say how much, packing character or story into a mock can really bring it to life. I think if you can almost give it a sense of movement without it actually physically moving, that in itself is something to really be proud of, or to certainly commend someone for, because that's quite a feat, and I think this mock does that beautifully. So I don't know if you're thinking the same thing, but I just can't help but imagine this thing flying through the sky. It's a sight to behold. It's really cool. So let's actually talk a bit about the mock. So very similar color scheme to Jafer's mock, using those same wings, that same sort of azure blue there. So just it's a good color for dragons if you want to play around with it. The head design on this mock, I also like the fact that you can't really see the eyes on it. I don't know, there's something that, again, sort of dips into being a little bit more abstract and different, and like something of a legend, I really, really do like that. That head, of course, is from the Invasion from Below wave of Hero Factory, from the old kind of kaiju-like creatures there. Quite fitting here for this dragon head, and beautiful to see how it very neatly transitions into this beautiful sea of socket connectors there in azure. I believe it's azure. I may be messing up that color. I think there's so many shades of blue, guys. It's hard to keep track, but I'm going to call it azure, and if I'm wrong, you can let me know. Anyway, I love how that looks. Just, again, beautiful example of parts spamming there to create this fantastic looking, just general like shape and beautiful sort of fluid kind of rhythm to it. It's lovely. And I always think that's just a good piece to have a whole bunch of, is those arm socket pieces there, or hand socket pieces, excuse me. I mean, they come in a variety of different sets and colors and all sorts of things. And typically, if you do get them in a set, you tend to get them in a pretty large quantity as well. You've got 2 hands on most mocks, so you've got 1 per hand. You typically see them on the feet. Sometimes they're on like the head or the other parts of the body. So you tend to get a good whack of them. So by all means, I think, if you're looking for a part to sort of buy bulk of, like we see here, it works beautifully here, and sometimes they come in really obscure colors too, so maybe it's worth buying a few hand connector pieces, because they're pretty versatile pieces. You can use them for all sorts of different stuff, and you can get some nice textures here, as we can see as well. So really nice to see. I also like the stand that's holding up this mock here. One thing that I adore about it is that it is this sort of ocean, sort of little lake or something, I don't know, whatever you want it to be. But if you look closely, there is this sort of very beautiful curve to it. Very similar to the dragon, of course, which is lovely. This mock's got some good curves. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's sort of very simply achieved by just sort of creating a very long stretch of water there, which looks like it's using those 1x2 blue, trans blue tiles there. And I imagine there's sort of a base underneath that of maybe sort of like trans clear bricks or something. And, often if you stack bricks out long enough, they do naturally just curve on their own. So maybe that's just that natural curve that naturally happens when you stack a lot of bricks on top of each other, and they've just sort of leaned into that a little bit more. I don't fully know how he's done that, but that little subtle bit of water curvature there, I think it's cool, and I think it adds to the movement and rhythm of this mock that I was talking about. It looks like it's swooping over the water and maybe causing the water to sort of move around because it's generating a bit of wind or whatever, or just, I don't know, the water's moving and it looks nice. It's pretty cool, I think, personally. So yeah, overall, I think just a brilliant looking mock, which, I don't know, there's just something so captivating about this that I wanted to talk about and share on this evening here today. So there you go. That's it for 4 dragon mocks in this episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series today. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you want to submit some of your own mocks to the show, you can do so through the email that's currently on your screen right now. It's also in the description below if you want to copy and paste that. Send me whatever you want. Images, pictures, information on the mock, as much or as little as you want. Really, it doesn't matter. I'll add it to the list and one day it'll appear on the show. But of course, I've got a lot of submissions to work through, so your patience is key. But don't be afraid to submit if you've got stuff to show off. Additionally, in the description below are links to all the mocks that you saw today, so be sure to check out some of the other stuff that these builders have done. They're all very talented people, and I think you'd enjoy looking at some of the other stuff they've got, that's for sure. While you're there as well, there's links to my own social media, so if you want to see some of the stuff that I'm posting, that's the best place to check it out. Stumbling over my words again, it's time for Ben to go to bed. But additionally, while you're in there and you're looking through my social media, if you're interested in supporting my Patreon, that is certainly something that I would very much be appreciative of. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, of course, but just $1 a month or something like that will give you access to bonus content like my Patreon podcast, access to my personal private Discord server where you can hang out and have some chats with me and some of the other guys in the crew. It's good fun. So if that's something you're interested in doing, I would very much appreciate it. But you don't have to if you don't want to. Anyway, thank you very much, guys. I'll see you in the next episode. Happy building. Good night, and bye for now.